in terms of Bunge's role in trying to figure out how promises will be kept. We're talking this morning, and he's here in the hot seat with us. It's been a minute, but he's here this morning. Robert Mbui is the Member of Parliament for Kaviani, and he's also the Deputy Minority Leader. He's in the hot seat this morning. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Very well.
It's been a
call it a hot seat, and it's very cold.
This morning. This morning it is. There we admit. But I reckon that with some of the things that you will probably shed light on today, that it won't take long to warm things up, right? Yeah. So thank you for joining us today. We're very glad that you've done that. It hasn't changed in the sense that we still go around the African continent every week. We come back with a problem from a particular country. Dennis will share where we are, and we'd love to get your interpretation.
Yes, today we are in Equatorial Guinea. Facts about it. The president has been there for 47 years now. It's a country that is rich in resources. We talk about oil, but like any other African story that soon would change with Nigeria showing us the way through Aliko Dangote. They ship it outside the country and import it back at exorbitant prices. But let's go to the proverb. A lie may run, but it never outruns the truth. How would you interpret it?
Wow. I mean, in the Kenyan context, it's perfect. During campaigns, we got extremely, rosy promises, which I guess probably people are using so that they could get elected. But, it catches up with them. And now we are going to another election, and, the truth is catching up with the lie. So I guess that basically it means that you can't keep lying to people. I mean, eventually the truth will come out, and that's what has happened in Kenya. We got cheated into the election, and now a year into the election, people know they were lied to, and of course you can see, the whole country has changed. Yeah. So I guess that's basically what it means.
So the report card will always show.
Oh yes, definitely.
It's interesting that you say that, because that is the direction in which you go to for this conversation this morning, and that there were certain things that people were told on the campaign trail or otherwise, and then it then becomes Bunge's role, or maybe I shouldn't say it, but ask it. Is it Bunge's role then to ensure that the promises that have been made by the folks who then come in as the majority ruling government, is it Bunge's role to ensure that those promises are kept before we now start to look into them?
Incidentally, it's Bunge's role is clearly stipulated in the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, and Bunge has it's supposed to deal with matters of concern to the people. So any issue of concern, like the people being killed in Kitui County, that's a matter that Parliament can deal with. When it comes to the agenda for development, it's very clear that's actually just the job of the executive. And I think one of the biggest problems we have faced as a country is that members of Parliament are elected and they think their work is to provide roads and to provide water and electricity. That's not their role. The Constitution says that a member of Parliament has three major roles. One of them is to oversight. In essence, make sure that the money that you appropriate to the executive is used properly, and these holes and gaps and misuse of that money is sorted out. So that's really one of the roles. The other one is to make laws, to legislate, and then when you're making laws, some of the bills that come to the House are actually private member bills. There's also making law by government. But then members of Parliament are supposed to interrogate any bill that is brought by the government and make sure that it basically is good for the people that elected them. And then finally, I think it's a representation of the people. And basically that means that if people have matters that concern them, your work is to make sure you speak on their behalf, because not everyone will go to Parliament. But when you speak in Parliament, you speak for the people that elected you. In fact, the National Assembly is different from the county, from the Senate. Because National Assembly, when you speak for every Kenyan. A Senate, you speak for the county that has elected you. So as a member of Parliament for Kaviani, when I speak on the floor of the House, I'm actually not speaking for for Kadhiani only. I'm speaking for Kenyans because it's our work to represent them. And I guess out of the constitution, we also have this other job of making the budget,
right,
which we do in consultation and in together with the treasury. So basically, those are the roles. But many times, you find members of parliament completely mixed up and going to the constituencies and giving promises about roads, about electricity, about water. And that's really not their job. If members were to understand their job, then it would be fairer, because then the executive does their work and we do ours. In fact, it is easier to allow the executive to do the work which they promise when they are vying for office, so that you make sure that you check them. And I would say this: if you look at counties, county governors, they are part of executive. So when a person who's vying for governor makes promises, it is a responsibility of the county assembly members to ensure that those promises, they can hold them to account. Now, at the same time, when the president goes around making promises during campaigns, it is the responsibility of National Assembly to hold him to account. You told us that Mama Mboga will be lifted from the bottom. In fact, you told us Mama Mbogas are going to have supermarkets. So we want to know how many Mama Mbogas have got supermarkets in Kenya. That's accountability.
And I think, Mheshimiwa, it's very interesting that you bring that up, because you look at the roles as you've clearly stipulated. And I'm looking at the promises that were given to Kenyans 2022 and the responsibility then of Parliament to ensure that these promises are actually implemented or are delivered to the people. Because at that point, you as Mbui are speaking to the people of Kadhiani, and these are individuals who look upon you to ensure that these things are actually delivered. That when you get to Parliament as members of Parliament, it is no longer about we are pro-government. You are members of Parliament who are supposed to ensure that citizens of the Republic get services, get the job done. But that's not the story, though.
Well, I'll say that where the problem is when members don't understand their roles clearly. Because you see, the executive, members of Parliament are not the ones that do implementation. And they are also not the ones that do the expenditure. Members of Parliament are supposed to oversight. So our work is to even your promises. You told us you will do 1, 2, 3. So it's a responsibility of members of Parliament to hold you to account to what you said. Now, for example, the current regime, and it's important to talk about the regime in office, because it's the easiest example. Now, when they were vying, and I just said, they told us that Mama Mboga will be uplifted. I would like them to show me how they have done it, because they told us they'll put money in our pockets. But the first thing they did is actually, with the first finance bill in 2023, was to actually take money out of people's pockets. So when you say one thing and do another, clearly that goes against the expectation of the public. Now, members of Parliament, unfortunately, some get caught in this matter of saying that I am part of government because I am elected on a UDA ticket, and UDA is forming government. So you believe that your responsibility is to do everything that the executive tells you to do.
Yes.
But actually, all of us as Parliament, whether in the majority or in the minority, our role is actually to oversight together. So if there is a minister that is not doing their job, when we start questioning them, it's a responsibility of every member to actually allow that questioning, so that we can get answers on behalf of the people that we represent. Several times I've asked certain questions. I remember in about a year or two ago, actually 2024. I remember asking a question to the CS for education, whether they were prepared for the CBE system that was going to grade 9.
Yes.
Because in 2020, the first grade 9 was in 2025.
Yes.
So in 2024, I asked this question: are we ready? Do we have the classrooms for grade 9? Do we have the lab? Because we require to have a lab in junior secondary, so that we can be able to transition. And the CS came to Parliament, and of course I would say he lied, because he said they were ready. It's almost 2 years later, we still have that problem. I travel in the constituency, everywhere I go, I'm told, oh, Mheshimiwa, we need a lab, please organize so that we can get a lab done. We need an extra class. It's a problem up to now. Now, it is the role of every member at the time when I asked such a question, that every member can contribute and say, look, we have a problem even in our own regions where we come from. But what happens is that because you are elected on a UDA ticket and UDA has formed government, you think your responsibility is to defend the CS. So when we are asking those hard questions, there will also be members defending and attempting to answer on behalf of the CSs. I think that's where the problem is. That's where the tragedy is.
Is it a forgotten role or a misunderstood role? A kind of like what you've alluded to, that it sounds almost terrible to say, Mheshimiwa, that there are members of parliament who should be fulfilling those three roles which you have explained, but don't understand. Do they not understand, or do they choose not to? Because what it appears like, again, alluding to what you've said, is that so long as you're part of a ruling party, for example, that you believe then your job is to endorse everything that should come and not push for the representation, oversight, budgetary that you have spoken about earlier. Is it forgetfulness or just lack of understanding?
I think it's a hangover from our old constitution that, a lot of people have not transitioned. I'll tell you, even part of the executive has not transitioned. Our president himself has not transitioned from the KANU days where the president was all powerful. And that's why you find even up to now, the members of parliament who are elected in parties that don't form government, but the first thing they do is they end up in State House, and then you ask them, what are you doing there? They say, we are looking for development for our people. Those kind of things, it means that people really don't understand their role. If we understood our role, and you go to the campaign trail knowing what is it you're expected to do, then even our campaign becomes easier. But again, it's also something I think I would also blame partly the public itself. The general public expect that when you stand there to vie for MCA, that you tell them what you do for them. And chances are there's some character vying for MCA will be saying, I'll make sure you have roads, I'll provide you with water, I'll build schools. And they don't have, they will not have the resources. Yeah. MCAs don't have resources. Members of parliament don't have resources. Both the National Assembly and Senate, they don't have resources to be able to do this development agenda. So when they stand up and say, I'll build roads, I'll provide you with electricity, they're lying. In fact, the answer I always give, because people will always ask you in every public baraza, Mheshimiwa, we have no electricity. I tell them, you know what? We will make sure that we liaise with the REREC to inform them of the area that is neglected. But I'm sure that in the fullness of time, every area will get connected. But there is a member who will go and say, I'm going to make sure that it's connected, as if they have the resources, and they don't. So I think it's a misunderstood thing, because we've changed our constitution about how many years ago now? About 16 years ago, and there are people who are still hung up to the old system. Otherwise, right now, the system that we have, members of parliament, whether majority, minority, we are the same. We do the same job, and the executive does their job. If they don't fulfill their promises, it's our work to tell them they're failing.
I mean, Robert, I look at parliament and how it is structured, right? So I look at government as well, executive, as part and parcel of kind of interconnected with Parliament in terms of originating bills and passing them down to Parliament. And that then would be presented before the House by the majority leader, who then leads government business in the House. And at that point, then one would hope that the bills that originate from government and majority leader, being one that sits in Parliament, is the first buffer zone to sit down with the executive and tell them, I think this one would not sit well with Parliament because of A, B, C, D. Perhaps before coming to Parliament, we can sit down even through our caucuses, parliamentary group meetings, and see how we can adjust these things before it ends up to before the floor of the House. But I look at the idea you say that we've not transitioned, and I look at politics of tokenism that have been played before, and you see that being played even in the 2010 constitution. That's why you find an MCA will come tell you that I will bring you roads, water, I will give you bursary, yet they know very well, either they know that they don't have the resources, but will keep on lying because that is what Mwananchi wants to hear. But I just want to hear your comment with regard to the majority leader and whether they serve the purpose of a buffer zone before bringing bills to Parliament or advising the president.
Now, I'll say this, that when bills come from the executive, one of the things, the first things that Parliament is expected to do is actually run them through what we call public participation.
Yeah.
That's in Article 10 and a few other articles of our Constitution. That decisions are not made by Parliament independent of the people that elected them.
Yes.
That you run those bills by them. And the members of the public will give their opinions. If you look at and I like talking about some of the bills that everyone knows about, like the 2023 finance bill.
Yep.
Now, it's taken through public participation. And the general public says no. Everyone who goes in front of the committee says, no, we are uncomfortable. This is not good for us. I mean, this is going to hurt us. The minute you you reduce our disposable income, you mess up the economy, because we need money to circulate. So if you take away all my money and it becomes part of taxation, then it's only the government that will be spending. The rest of us have nothing to spend. So you hurt business. And of course, at the end of the day, when businesses are hurt, and you saw what happened, so many businesses closed. So general public is supposed to be involved. So the government brings their bills, they go through the leader of majority, they are taken to the committee that is responsible. In that case, the one I've talked about is Finance Committee of the House. Then the committee goes for public participation. And this is an exercise that costs a lot of money. Kenyans are invited from all walks of life to come and give their opinion. The tragedy is that everything Kenyans say is ignored. So that means we are working at the behest of the executive. And that's why some of us say that, the parliament has been captured by the executive. Because why is it that we can see this is going to hurt the people that we represent, but we still go ahead and vote in its support? We still go ahead and ignore their opinion. And that's why you saw the young Kenyans decided, no, I mean, we are going to salimia you because of...
but for what, Mheshimiwa? Because we talk about the state capture, we talk about the capture of parliament, but this is not the kind of capture whereby somebody puts a mask over your head and, puts handcuffs on you and throws you into the trunk of a vehicle. This is willingly endorsing, ceding, willingly ceding, not your own power. You are ceding the representative power of the people to an individual. You're doing this willingly. Every time you agree to an increased debt ceiling, every time you deny the voice of the people when they went through public participation, every time people have told you very clearly, this is what we want, and you are the one to represent us. Every time that happens, and going against the grain of the majority of the population, every time that's happening, but it's happening willingly. You're not, when you say you've captured, when the executive has captured, it's almost like saying, here I am, please take me. It doesn't sound to me like it's being forced. So then the more damning question comes in saying, why should Kenyans make a selection over folks who have shown time and time and time again that they are actually not able to represent them as the Constitution demands?
I totally agree with you. And that's why I'm an advocate of, study what your member has done over the period that you've elected them.
Yeah.
And thank God that every 5 years there is an opportunity to make a decision again. Yeah. And there are those that will serve one term and go home. There are those that might get an extra term based on their service and what they have done for the people that elect them. So it's an individual thing. But generally, if I could just be blunt, I think majority of members of parliament fall in the category of those that are not representing the constituents. And that's why, and I'm not talking about this particular parliament, I'm talking about parliaments from time immemorial. That is why people are elected and about 70% are kicked out after 5 years. Why would you be elected overwhelmingly with over 90% votes and 5 years down the road nobody wants to see you? It basically means that you have failed. So I think I'm happy that Kenyans get an opportunity every 5 years. The only thing Kenyans have to do is be careful when they're elected, because unfortunately during that period there is two things that happen. There are people that are very good at lying. And they can tell you a very good story. I mean, they can weave a very good yarn, and people buy into it. And William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, is one of such person. Those that are very good at giving a good story. He gave us very good stories. I mean, if if you want to unpack the things that the president has said to the electorate and the ones that he has achieved, I mean, it would be shocking.
Can you go through a couple of those? Because I have a list, but let me just do three.
I remember he, first and foremost, let's talk about those that he promised that he will uplift. That was Mama Mboga and Boda Boda. And that was his slogan. Everywhere he went, he said, "This is a hustler nation, tutainua Mama Mboga and Boda Boda." His form government, I would be interested in seeing how many Mama Mbogas and Boda Bodas have been uplifted. When he was, he did his convention of UDA, when he was being endorsed as a candidate, he said, when I get into office, there will be free diapers for all women that give birth.
That was one of the ones on my list, and I want to ask you, how that would work from a legislative point of view, then to a budgetary point of view. Yeah. So if he says,
he never brought a proposal.
Okay, so that's why I want to ask you exactly how that would work, so that we can get an understanding. Because I think a lot of times where we fall into a bit of a conundrum is that we don't understand the process of a promise being made, and then what happens in the legislative body on towards spending the money. So then it's very easy for us to get caught up in the excitement of the promise without understanding that this is what would happen when it comes to brick and mortar. Now, when the president, before he became president, in this, I don't know what they were being called, schedules? I can't remember, but there was one for each sector.
Yeah.
Something, pillars, something.
Manifesto.
In the manifesto, there were pillars.
Oh, yeah, there were pillars.
It was meet the people,
right?
Something, yeah.
So one of the things he did say, and it was great. I mean, the thought of it, I think about it and I think, well, that would be absolutely wonderful. Because women who give birth, one of the most expensive things is the diapers that you deal with in that period when this baby is so small. Because this is where the rubber meets the road, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
When he says that we will provide every birth mother with diapers for 3 months. That means that by the time that child is born, until they get to 90 days, where so many things are happening here, that you don't need to be dealing with that very expensive cost. Now, when he says that, that's about half the population, and maybe the birthing stage is now 50% of that 50% at a particular time. Now, when it comes to Parliament, I mean, it's great. Everybody heard it. When it comes to Parliament, what would need to happen in the National Assembly for that to, because it's legislative, because everybody who goes to hospital to give birth is going to get 3 months worth of diapers. Is it delivered to your home? Does somebody say, here's the money, come to your county, or go to a Huduma center, pick up the money? How would it work for that to happen if it was true?
I wish we were to ask William Samoei Ruto that question, because he's the one who gave that promise. But I can say this, that if I was to make such a promise in such an office, and I assumed office, then it would be one of those things that I would propose in my budget cycle. Because the budget actually starts from the budget policy statement that comes from the Treasury. And so I would propose that it would be part and parcel of what is in the proposal.
Right.
That let us set aside would obviously do some kind of estimate how many women would be expected to be giving birth on maybe monthly or annually, so that you can be able to do that annual budget, and you do a budget of the cost of the diapers, and then you propose it and you bring it in the budget.
Right.
It was never done. There has never been any proposal concerning diapers.
So then it was not intended. It was never intended.
It was a story. I mean, that's why I'm saying the biggest problem we have is very good storytellers during campaign period.
Okay.
I'll tell you another one. That when the president met women in KICC, he told them he's going to make sure that the price of mtungi of gas will come down to, he said, two figures, to 500 or 300.
Yes.
Now he gave two figures, so I immediately gave two figures. That was a red flag. I knew they've been lied to.
Okay.
Because you can't have two figures. 500 and 300 are totally different figures. So if you give two figures, it means you're lying. But again, there's never been any attempt to reduce the price of gas to anywhere near those figures.
If anything, it has increased in cost.
Yeah.
Of course it has. But that was a promise that was given. And there's never been any legislative proposal from the executive to try and do that. I mean, he went to some market and said that you know, you have been struggling with your phones, making calls, and it's very expensive. You need bundles. From when I become president, I'm going to make sure we have free Wi-Fi in every market. Sasa mambo ya bundles ya kupiga simu will be a thing of the past. There's never been a proposal to attempt to do that. The only thing we've had is an attempt to do some, ICT hubs, a few within every constituency, maybe probably every ward. So that would be 1,450 such hubs. And the hub is like a room where people can come and be taught something to do with ICT. That doesn't give free Wi-Fi in the markets. So people can make free calls. But that was a promise. So I'm just saying that the problem we face as a country is that we have very, very good people in giving stories. But when it comes to implementation, they have no intention at all.
They were charters. That's what they were. They were charters. That's what they were in this manifesto. Okay.
And they were just stories.
Okay.
I mean, Robert, I want to look at what you've just mentioned, the stories that were given through a manifesto, through these charters that were given. And what happens to these manifestos once one gets into power? Because today we're talking about all these things that are promised through these charters that made the better agenda, right? But today no one is talking about implementing that manifesto. So is it just part of the story to get to power with zero implementation of the same? And I would further ask a follow-up question that is Parliament or members of Parliament, especially those who are aligned to the executive, afraid that if they don't speak the president's language, development would not come to them? But then again, does the executive have the power? Does the president have the power to say, like, say, in your constituency, you've brought a motion in the House and you say, I want an extra school. Does the president have power to say, no, you will not have that school or that class constructed in your constituency simply because you are not speaking the same language, especially if it has gone through Parliament? Or is it that these members of Parliament just do not know their role and the power they have, and that the president does not have the power to control development going to the constituencies?
Actually, you kind of have nailed it, hit the nail on the head. You've nailed it. The reality is that the members of Parliament have power. The House of Parliament is actually more powerful than the executive. There are three arms of government. I mean, there's a legislative arm, that's Parliament. We have the judiciary, and we've got the executive. That's the presidency and his team. If you, in strict reading of the Constitution, you realize that a lot of the power is actually vested in Parliament. In fact, including even the power of budget. Even though you're supposed to do it in consultation with Treasury, but Parliament, in terms of even by sheer fact that they must pass it, get some excess, more power than the
or even amend it.
Yes, they can even amend it, and for the budget to exist, members of Parliament must vote for it. So Parliament is actually more powerful, in my opinion, than the executive when it comes to certain things. But we cede this power because of personal selfish interests. Because I want to be able to get favors that will probably, more projects done in my constituency than another constituency. So basically, I would rather give that power to the executive because I am aligned to the executive. But if Parliament was to actually, put their foot down, we will do like what you see in CDF, where the money going to all the constituencies is discussed and it is shared equally across board. I'm serving my third term in Parliament, and I can tell you, when it comes to national government projects, I can only speak of two projects in more than 10 years. One road that was launched in 2017 by William Samoei Ruto, which has never been completed.
What do you mean?
One road, one tarmac road, which was launched by the then deputy president.
He was the deputy president at the time?
Yes, he was deputy president. 2017, from a place called Keno to a place called Kaani in the constituency. It's not even a very long, very big, very long stretch. But that road has never been completed. In fact, the last 3 years since William Ruto became president, it kind of stalled. Before that, it was a struggle to get anything done. The people who did who supplied, and the people who provided their services, my own constituents are constantly up in arms complaining about the what is owed to them.
Pending bills.
Now that's one project. The other one is staff houses for police at the constituency headquarters in Kadhiani. That not even a big building. I think barely about 20 houses. That is it for 3 terms. But you go to certain constituencies and you find projects from one corner to the other. And so this is happening because members of parliament, instead of taking power to themselves, and allowing that we discuss these things and be fair to each other, they would rather give the power to the executive and then allow the executive to do favors for them, so that the project that is coming to your constituency is because you are aligned. And me, because I'm not aligned and I am from the minority, if I raise my voice, you allow me to speak, I'll be heard, but I'll never have my way. That's where the problem is. I think going forward, people must understand that if you are elected, Parliament must sit and look at things in totality, not listen to what they are told by the executive, and that's where we've been failing. Because the executive says we don't want a road in a certain place, we want it done in this place, and members will just agree instead of sitting and asking ourselves, so what is a road network in Kenya? Which areas do we want roads to be done? Why? How much should we provide in this area? We will receive a budget that has been done by Treasury, by mandarins in Treasury, supported, of course, by a big team of economists that sits in State House. And then they'll come and bring it to the House as a policy statement. Changing it will be done, but very minor. Primarily, it will be followed almost to the letter. So I think that's where the problem is. And this is done even before public participation. So that means even when you do public participation, what people will say will not be taken into consideration, because the president in his genius and his executive have already decided. That's where we go wrong as a country. I think going forward, the proposals you're giving of members themselves to take charge and to take authority. I'll give you an example. The other day we had this National Infrastructure Fund debate on the floor.
Yes.
Now, this is a proposal that you form a fund where when you sell all our assets, you put it there. You put them there.
Yes.
Of course, I opposed it because I first don't want even the sale of the assets. You're selling Kenya Pipeline, you're selling Safaricom, everything you're selling, you want to put the money there. But the intention is that you want to use this money in this fund to borrow again. You're borrowing outside the bracket that you talked about, the debt ceiling.
Yes.
Because this is not through the consolidated fund. It's a fund on the side, but with authority to borrow. So when you borrow with that fund, I think the initial intention was to raise about 4 trillion.
Yes.
Now, actually 5 trillion. 5 trillion.
Yes.
Now, 5 trillion is bigger than our national budget.
Yes.
Bigger than our national budget, and only for infrastructural development. So I said that we have a proposal to amend this law so that Parliament can be monitoring and checking what are the projects that you are actually undertaking using this law, so that every quarter we get a report. And it was opposed by members of the majority party. They completely opposed it. And what was shocking me is that the whip would just stand up and tell them, no, it just says X, and that's it. And I even remember saying, how can you give away power? That was the time power was the slogan. I said, look, how do you give away power? People are fighting for power. You are saying, let's give away our power. So I think we have a very rogue house, and not this one, but even the ones I've seen in the past. Kenyans now need to ask themselves, what caliber of people do you want to elect? I was telling you that there are 2 types of people that there are those that are intending to, they're elected. In fact, no, it's not here, but I was talking to someone, I was telling them, there are 2 types of people elected in the house. People that are determined to make lives better for the people that elect them. That's one group. And I can tell you it's probably about half of the house.
Okay.
There is another group, people that are intending to benefit themselves at a personal level. So if you elect people that are intending to benefit themselves at a personal level, how do you expect them to provide services for you?
Be tough.
So people have to be careful. You must look at history of the people that are asking you for their votes and get their track record so that you can know this is the kind of person we can elect that will help us. Some of the people elected have been holding parastatal offices and have even, criminal records. We have members that are, people that have been running from one court to the other.
Some in jail.
Yeah. So I mean, Kenyans themselves also have to take up this challenge.
Indeed.
Because it is Kenyans who decide what caliber of people come to the house. Now, if you're going to give your vote to the highest bidder because somebody can come to your village and give everybody 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000, if the fella disappears with all your money for the next 5 years, then you can't complain. Because after all, you've bought the vote. So it's important for our viewers to also know that there is a role that the general public also plays.
Indeed. And one of those roles, interestingly, has come out into the public arena for a while, especially since the 2024 finance bill protest that took place. And one of the things that started out was that there was public call for recall your member of parliament, because we're talking about that unit of representation, budget making, oversight, legislation. We're saying that at that point, if this person is not fulfilling the role that they ought to, then you can actually recall them and say, you know what, folks, it seems that we made a mistake and perhaps we need somebody else to be in that position. But then it became very murky, because the folks who are supposed to oversee the process of ensuring this should happen are the members of parliament themselves. So we don't see a situation whereby Robert Mbui is going to set up a mechanism whereby it makes it easy for you to remove Robert Mbui. So then it becomes an exercise in futility, because we just keep going round and round the ragged rock and we're not ending up anywhere. So is it, first of all, just demystify this thing for us. Is it true? Can you actually recall your member of parliament and say, you know what, you are actually not working. Just come and go do your private business and let somebody else come and handle these three roles that the Constitution demands of them? Is it actually possible to recall your member of parliament in Kenya today?
I think the Constitution does allow that. But I think the law that was passed by Parliament was it faced headwinds, I think, in court. Yeah, so there was a law actually, and the problem was the court process. Now the fast tracking your own slaughter is not not exactly.
I wouldn't imagine it was.
But I can tell you that currently you saw what happened when the Gen Zs hit the streets, and members of parliament had to change phone numbers, and people had to vacate their homes because they hit out very hard. Actually, a lot of members had to get security for their, particularly those that were in the majority, because all these bills passed through a majority vote. So I think those would be the same people that would be passing a law allowing impeachment. And look at it this way: if people are so they're so annoyed with you that they can come and burn your house, that they can come and stone you, that they will not allow you to even visit the constituency, they would impeach you. And so if you are many of you facing the same situation, the same challenge, then you can easily gang up. But I think this thing was actually held up in court, not in parliament. Yes.
I mean, Robert, there is the question on the leadership of the House, and that has come forth for a very long time, that the Speaker of the National Assembly is the weakest link when it comes to Parliament being captured. That the Speaker of the National Assembly has been seen as the one who sings kumbaya with the executive and forgotten the role of the National Assembly. How would you rate the Speaker of the House? Is it making it easier for the House to be captured?
Let me say this, that of course every speaker, even and I'm serving under the second speaker, every speaker somehow seems to have an allegiance to the side that elected them.
Okay.
Remember that just JB Muturi was elected by Jubilee, and so therefore for the 10 years he was a little aligned to that side. It happens even in the US. The only thing is that there are certain excessive actions that a speaker could do. But if a speaker balances and allows members from both sides to be heard, then that's
so he shouldn't be overtly biased.
Well, it shouldn't be overly biased. Now, I can tell you my problem would be with the deputy speaker, because the speaker, yes, of course, there are obvious weaknesses that everybody has seen, but the deputy speaker at one time refused to allow me to point out to the House that there were no people in the House while they were discussing the sale of, I think it was the sale of Kenya Pipeline.
Yes, she did actually.
There were no members in the House, and I raised on a point of order, and she completely ignored me. I shouted, she completely ignored me. I ended up actually grabbing the mess because I had no alternative. Because you're selling Kenya Pipeline, Kenyans haven't authorized it, and the House has about 15, no, actually less than, there were about 12 members in the House at that time. You minimum quorum is 50. So how do you allow 12 members to transact? And out of the 12 members, remember there is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 that are already on the minority side. So in essence, we are talking about eight members of parliament are going to make a serious decision,
right?
A decision that turns the country around.
So what happens in that situation when there are so there are 290 members of parliament, right?
For you to have quorum,
to sit in that house, so 50 should be in the House for quorum.
Yes.
And in order for a substantive decision to be made, you must achieve quorum.
Yes, there must be quorum, yes.
So if there are 8 people in the House, 8.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4,
and
5, 6, 7, 8.
You can tell from if you look at the videos of that time when I was being thrown out, there was no one in the House.
I actually watched that session when you were thrown out because of 1, 2, 3.
Grabbing the mess, yeah.
So for something like that, please explain how this process happens. If there are 8 people in the House for which a quorum of at least 50 is required, how does this thing pass?
What happens is that the Speaker, again, that's a law, that's our standing order. The Speaker is not supposed to see. So the Speaker cannot raise the issue of quorum, even if it's one person. As long as there's somebody there, the Speaker is not supposed to see that there is no quorum. So it is a member who rises on their place and says and rises on a point of order, and then when they're given that opportunity is when they say there is no quorum.
Right.
And so therefore, because there's no quorum, I can't remember the standing order, then we can't proceed. So you stop business and then you ring the quorum bell for a period, so that members who may be in the lobby, some may be having a cup of tea, some may be in their offices, but they're able to watch what's going on. They can now stream in and then we can continue. But when the Speaker refuses to acknowledge you, and I'm saying point of order, they know the reason I'm raising this point of order, because they're not, they may be blind basically in terms of what their law says, but they are not blind, physically blind. They can see there's no people. So they know why I'm raising on a point of order, and they ignore.
But more importantly, beyond, because many could argue, okay, so maybe somebody was in a spot of bother that day, didn't like your tie, didn't like the way you were looking that day. It happens to human beings. And then the thing escalated to a point where it should not have. But the important thing that was being discussed that day, did it proceed?
Yes, it proceeded as if there was
on an illegality.
Completely illegal.
Yes. So this is the thing here. Yes. So then why do things like that continue to happen? Because one would have said, if you stood on point of order and if you stood on business to say that this is actually not allowed constitutionally, we cannot be having a discussion of such national importance where, number one, you do not have quorum. Number two, you've gone against the rules of the House, but still this conversation has passed as though there were quorum, and a substantive decision that was going to affect the country has then been made. Who's to answer to that?
That's what I'm saying. The question was about the Speaker, and I personally I went straight for the Deputy Speaker because the Deputy Speaker has severally demonstrated outrageous decisions.
Yeah.
And but the Speaker may make mistakes, but he is also sly, so he will not make it too obvious and too open. But clearly, all speakers will always be aligned to the side where they got their votes from. That's to be seen. I think there is also this issue of. It's a complicated thing. When you want to be Speaker, the people that elect you are members of Parliament. So ideally, you will find that the minority, and that in this case, even though we were a majority at the beginning, physically now we are minority because a lot of members have jumped ship and gone to the other side. But Azimio would be is basically minority when we started conducting business. At the election, we were majority. Members defected, others went, without doing it officially. So during the elections for the speaker, the Azimio Brigade had a candidate in the person of former Speaker Marende.
Yes.
And the team of Kenya Kwanza had a candidate in the person of Moses Masika Wetangula. So basically, ideally, the people that made him speaker are the ones on the side of the majority now. And that is the UDA Brigade, Ford Kenya, all those parties. And Wiper, ODM didn't vote for him. So naturally, as a human being, you would, when you're seated at that chair, and you're looking at a situation that would favor a Wiper member against a UDA member, there's a possibility that.
But Robert, you see,
we also have to be human.
Realistic.
But Robert, when you talk about the infrastructure fund that was being discussed, or the sale of KPC, right? And there was no quorum. That means there was no way that matter would proceed for it even to be okayed, because it's an illegality. So here now, one would say one can go to court on a technicality, because the process within which that the sale of KPC went through was illegal because there was no quorum in house. And now that we find ourselves here, does Parliament, does the Speaker care about the process that ends up with acts of Parliament, with decisions in Parliament, because the process should determine the end?
Let me tell you something very interesting. Even if you go to court, the court has no eyes in the house.
Wow.
So the only thing the court would use is what we call the Hansard.
Hansard, yes.
And Hansard is a verbal, the verbal communication.
Yes.
Now, since I was not given the opportunity to raise the matter of quorum, if you look at the Hansard at that time, there is no mention that there was no quorum, because the speaker never gave me that opportunity.
Oh my gosh, okay.
The only thing that will be there is that, you have attempted to take the mace and I'm sending you away from the house. That will be on Hansard. But the reason why is not on Hansard. So even if you go to court now, that it will be your word against. So it's a very complex thing, because how do you prove there was no quorum other than when a member stands up and says there's no quorum?
That's very interesting.
So that's a problem we face.
That's very interesting. But I think so. If you give rise to that, and then just coming through this whole conversation, I'm reminded of a court case, a very famous one that happened in this country, whereby two men had been accused and went through the charges and went through a trial over a gang rape of a woman. But on the court record where the list of witnesses and all of this had been put down for the charge sheet, there was no signature by the court clerk. So they went through all the evidence sharing, all the evidentiary responsibility was given, but the judge had to dismiss the case based on the fact that that sheet had not been signed.
Yeah.
So here we are saying that, and then they was dismissed.
Yeah.
Leave alone what happened later on, but on that alone, that we are saying something like the divestiture of a public entity is being discussed on no quorum, which is a prerequisite for such things, doesn't happen. So then one is meant to ask, how many things then slip under the door that are not actually on the record, if such a thing in the public glare can happen, and you tell yourself that there's an oversight body, a representative body, a budget-making body, how many things could actually be lurking in the shadows that are actually sending Kenyans to their knees on a regular basis?
There are many. I will even tell you that, our Constitution, Article 115, gives the president some kind of power when it comes to the law, the power to assent to bills, and so that they become acts of parliament. If he doesn't do anything, within 2 weeks they become law. But if he expresses any reservations, for Parliament to be able to ignore his reservations, they would require 2/3. So there's some power given to the president. Now, what the presidents have always done, and not just this one, even from the time we started the implementation of this constitution in 2013, the president would not express reservations, but they would give an amendment. They would give a bill with an amendment. You know, amending the bill is a responsibility of Parliament.
Parliament, yes.
The law states that they can return the bill and express their, if they have some reservations, some dissatisfaction, they can say, I'm uncomfortable with this, so that we as a house can address it and decide how would we amend it. But we have always received amendments. And you know what? To overturn the amendment, you require 2/3. So what, in my opinion, that's an illegality by itself, because the president cannot legislate. But they have always legislated. They bring that bill. You can change figures. Like, let's say you can change figures on the finance bill. The president can return them to what he wanted and say and return
as
them.
Yes,
as it is. And if you don't raise 2/3, that's it. It becomes law. I mean, so it's a very difficult situation we are in. I think that's why we require decency and leaders that that are decent enough to be able to do a good job.
Indeed.
The kind of leadership we have now of insults and that's not helping the country at all, and that's not giving us confidence that we are going in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, I mean, whether we like each other or don't like each other, we must know that we have a country to run.
Absolutely.
And we must respect the law that is there. And everybody must respect each other. If the insults are coming from none other than the president, how then do we run this country?
One of the things that you have said this morning is that you actually need to look at the person who you've elected to represent you and see what it is that they've done. Somebody suggested the other day that you actually should have people stand on business, literally, and show you what they've actually done.
Oh, yes.
Robert Mbui is the Member of Parliament for Kathiani constituency, also the Deputy Minority Leader. Thank you for being here with us this morning, opening our eyes to certain insights. We look forward to some more conversations in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.